Okay, so Brokenlore Unfollow just dropped on January 16th, and I need to talk about this because it's probably the most Gen Z horror game I've ever played, and I'm genuinely not sure if that's a compliment or not. So here's the deal. This is the third game in the Broken Lore series from Serafini Productions, which is basically this anthology of psychological horror games that all tackle different modern anxieties. You don't need to play the previous ones to understand this. Each game is standalone, but they're all connected in this weird meta way if you care about lore. This one specifically is about a girl named Anne who's trapped in a nightmare dimension that's basically a manifestation of all her trauma from being bullied, dealing with toxic social media culture, having terrible parents, and struggling with body dysmorphia. It's heavy stuff. The game is $20 for the standard version or $25 for the deluxe edition, which gets you the soundtrack, a customizable cat companion, and an extra ending scenario. It's out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC through Steam and Epic. I played it on PC, and it took me about 3.5 to 4 hours to beat, which is honestly pretty short, but there are multiple endings and collectibles if you want to replay it. The devs advertise it as this deep dive into the dark side of social media, with guest appearances from real influencers like Akita Dearest and Knight, which is honestly a wild choice that I have mixed feelings about, but we'll get to that. Alright, so what actually works in this game? Because there are some genuinely effective moments here. The atmosphere is really strong when it wants to be. The sound design is excellent, like the music knows exactly when to ramp up the tension and when to go quiet and let the environment speak for itself. Some of the creature designs are legitimately disturbing in that symbolic horror way where they represent specific traumas. There's one that's supposed to symbolize body dysmorphia, and it's genuinely unsettling, not because it's a monster, but because of what it represents. The game has this mechanic where there's a follower counter at the bottom of the screen the whole time, which is a cool touch that constantly reminds you of Anne's obsession with validation, even while she's running for her life. There's also this one chapter where you're in a hospital and live stream comments start popping up on screen reacting to what you're doing. And honestly, that was the most interesting part of the whole game. People in chat are giving you advice, some are supportive, but most are just toxic and awful, and it really drives home how parasocial relationships and online culture can mess with your head. I wish they'd use that mechanic more throughout the game instead of just that one section, because it was genuinely fresh and tied perfectly into the social media theme. The story itself tackles some really important topics that don't get explored much in games: cyberbullying, eating disorders, abusive family dynamics, the pressure to perform for an audience online. It's all here, and when the game is subtle about it, the writing can be genuinely moving. There are moments where you're piecing together what happened to Anne through environmental storytelling and collectibles, and some of it hits pretty hard. The voice acting is solid too. The cast includes some recognizable YouTubers, and they did a decent job, even though it's kinda weird hearing influencers voice characters in a game about how influencer culture is toxic. Multiple endings give it some replay value, and there's a chapter select so you can go back and find collectibles you missed without replaying the whole thing. But okay, let's talk about the problems, because oh boy, there are a lot of problems. First off, the gameplay is extremely basic. This is a walking simulator with occasional stealth sections and chase sequences, and none of it is particularly well designed. The stealth feels unbalanced and inconsistent. Sometimes enemies spot you instantly, and sometimes they're completely blind. The chase sequences are frustrating because the environments are way too dark and maze-like, so you're constantly getting hit by enemies because you can't see where the game wants you to go. It turns tension into annoyance real fast. The puzzles are also terrible. Like, most of them are just find item to progress, but the game has this annoying habit where items only appear after you trigger the objective. You'll search a room, find nothing, activate the puzzle, then have to go back to the exact same room to grab an object that magically spawned. It's lazy design, and it breaks immersion. The game also relies way too heavily on jump scares. Like, every 10 minutes something is screaming in your face or lunging at the camera, and after the first hour it just gets old. Jump scares aren't scary, they're just loud and startling, and this game uses them as a crutch instead of building genuine dread. The pacing is all over the place, too. The first 90 minutes are actually pretty focused. It's about Anne dealing with her school bullying trauma, and it works. But then the game just keeps adding more and more plot threads. Suddenly, it's also about her parasocial relationship with a YouTuber and her abusive parents, and for some reason, there's a section where you end up in the pool rooms, which is just random backrooms creepypasta stuff that doesn't fit. One reviewer literally said the game devolves into absolute nonsense in the last 2 hours, and honestly, yeah, that's accurate. It feels like the devs had a bunch of ideas and just crammed them all in without thinking about cohesion. The game is also really heavy-handed with its themes. Like, instead of being subtle about body dysmorphia, they just write words like piggy and fatty on the walls in big letters. Instead of showing you the impact of bullying, they have cartoonishly evil bully characters in backstory comics. It's all very on the nose, and honestly kind of juvenile in how it presents these serious topics. And okay, we need to talk about the controversy, because people noticed that some of the in-game social media posts and photos look like they might be AI generated. The devs made a whole post saying all the artwork was created by real human artists and listed them by name, but some Steam reviews are calling out specific images that have the telltale signs of AI slop. There's also questions about whether the YouTubers who appear in the game actually gave consent to have their images and likenesses used, because some of their posts got mysteriously deleted. The game also has performance issues on PS5. People are reporting frequent crashes, especially after a recent update. There's a whole guide online about how to fix Brokenlore Unfollow crashing on PS5, which is not a good sign for a game that just launched. Some people beat it in 3.5 to 4 hours without any crashes, then tried to replay it for collectibles, and it just kept crashing over and over. PC version seems more stable, but still has issues. Oh, and the game only has one audio slider for all sound, which is absurd in 2026. You can't adjust music, voice, and effects separately. Also, it uses Unity Asset Store environments, which isn't inherently bad, but combined with everything else, it makes the game feel kinda cheap. So, fun or refund? Is Broken Lore Unfollow worth $20? Honestly, this is a tough one because the game has genuinely good intentions and tackles important themes, but the execution is really rough. If you're super into indie psychological horror and you want to experience a game that's actually trying to say something about modern social media culture, then maybe give it a shot on sale. The atmosphere is solid, the sound design is great, and there are a few genuinely effective moments that will stick with you. But if you're looking for tight gameplay, subtle storytelling, or a game that's longer than a Marvel movie, then this is probably a refund. The gameplay is basic walking simulator stuff with frustrating stealth and chase sections. The story becomes a convoluted mess in the second half. It's way too heavy-handed with its messaging, and it's over in less than 4 hours. $20 for 3 to 4 hours isn't terrible value, but when half of that runtime is mediocre and the game has technical issues and potential ethical problems with AI art and YouTuber consent, it's hard to recommend at full price. If you already love the Broken Lore series, then yeah, this is probably worth playing to continue the story. Apparently, there's a prequel called Brokenlore Follow coming later this year. But for newcomers, I'd say wait for a sale or just watch a playthrough because the story and themes are interesting, but the game part of this game is pretty weak. I'm giving this a conditional fun for people who are specifically into narrative horror and can tolerate clunky gameplay, but for most people, it's a refund. The devs clearly care about the message and there is ambition here, but it needed more time in development to actually nail the execution. Also, maybe not make a game criticizing influencer culture while prominently featuring real influencers without being super transparent about consent and compensation. That's just kind of weird energy.